Hello everyone and welcome to another episode here of the audiobook series. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe, and today we continue the story of Amyntas, the son of Persia, in chapter 12. Now where we last left off, Amyntas, Artaxerxes, Iseridan, and Dalandar met an old face on the island of Sicily, the Themistocles. As Themistocles had caught him up to date with what's happening in Greece and in the heart of the Persian Empire. Artabanus is at the head. Macedonia is invading Sparta. All the while, everyone believing that the two, Amyntas and Artaxerxes, are dead. And on the island, Amyntas meets a unknown figure who knows a lot more about him than he realizes. And this being tells him that to help him find clarity, he must go to Thrace. And at Thrace, he finds a statue of himself from a different life, holding a sword called the Lion's Fang. And upon releasing it from its stone slumber, the memories have returned. So let's find out how Amyntas reacts to this. "Amyntas, are you all right?" asked Artaxerxes. The prince hovered over him with a worried expression. The Spartan blinked his eyes and slowly got up. He looked around the room with a blank expression. His eyes studied all the faces around him as if trying to understand where he was. "Amyntas?" asked the prince once more. "I'm fine," he said calmly. His voice was not the same. It no longer carried the bravado and confidence it once had. Instead, it was replaced with a voice of quiet grace. "Did you regain your memories?" asked Iseridan. Amyntas nodded his head. "What did you see?" asked Themistocles. "Not here. We need to leave," said Amyntas. Getting up from the ground, he grabbed the rest of the armor, wrapped the sword around his waist, and ran back upstairs. As his friends watched him leave, Artaxerxes looked at Themistocles. "What happened to him?" asked the Athenian. "I'm unsure, but evil whatever he saw changed him. Come, we best follow." Making their ascent out of the secret tunnel, they met Amyntas back at the temple grounds, only to be surrounded by a host of Persian immortals. Stepping into view was the immortal they had met at the docks before their arrival. "An odd place to acquire materials, don't you think?" mocked the Persian. Amyntas stood in front of his friends, sword at the ready. The immortal looked at the Spartan and nodded his head. "So it is you. I knew a man of your caliber would not die in Carthage." The immortal looked over the Greek shoulder. "And I see we are not alone. Hello there, Artaxerxes. Or should I say, your former majesty." The young prince stepped forward and stood behind the Spartan. "Seems your assassin failed to kill us," said the prince. The immortal laughed. "We did not send him to kill you. His mission was to acquire the stone, but it seems you accomplished that task for him." The immortal saw a glimpse of the stone underneath the prince's cloak. "Hand it over, and we'll let you go." "Why so generous?" inquired the Spartan. "My dear boy, do you think you are a threat to us? It's been 6 years. You both exist now in stories we've made to the masses," replied the immortal. "That was a mistake. Artabanus should have killed us on that day. Instead, he offered mercy. I will not make that mistake. The here is my offer. You let us pass, and I won't kill any of you." All the immortals started to laugh at the threat. Even the captain managed to get out a chuckle. "Oh, you Greeks and your comedy. I have enjoyed this little act of theater, but now I must order you to hand over the stone." Amyntas pointed his sword at the captain. The immortal sighed. "So be it. Kill them," he ordered. Everyone readied themselves for combat as the immortals closed in on them. What happened next could not be defied by mere words. In a flash, Amyntas cut one soldier in half and beheaded another. He was faster, stronger, and more dangerous than before. None of the immortals could match his speed. He was no longer human. One tried to defend himself with his sword, but it did little as he was cut in half by the lion's fang. Blood splattered all over the ruins. It caked the floor, stained the monuments. Limbs were severed, and armor was reduced to nothing. It was a sight unlike any other. As the last Persian fell, the ground was littered with the bodies of a dozen soldiers at most. Their blood stained and smeared the floor. And Amyntas had not even broken a sweat. Artaxerxes and the others were stunned, speechless, as was the guild zealot. His eyes were wide with horror and shock. Looking back at the Spartan, there was no drop of blood on him, not even a stain. Who was he? By the gods, what are you? Asked the zealot. Amyntas slowly walked towards the captain, his sword covered in blood. The zealot unsheathed his sword and pointed at the Spartan. Amyntas was not worried, for he saw the trembling hand. Fear had consumed the enemy. Suddenly, Amyntas stopped just before the Persian, eyes locked on his prey. The Persian, confused and scared, let out a yell and swung his sword at the Spartan. Sadly for him, his life was cut short as Amyntas grabbed the man's arm and stabbed the Persian with his own sword in one fluid motion. "You should have taken my offer," said Amyntas. The zealot choked on his blood as he tried to respond. Amyntas dropped the dead guild member and wiped the blood off his blade. As he tended to his weapon, his friends examined the carnage that had just inspired. "Dakota," said Themistocles. "I've never seen such ferocity before. No mere Spartan could have done that." "That was no mere Spartan, Themistocles. That was someone else," replied Artaxerxes. After cleaning his blade, the Spartan told his allies that they must leave before more men arrived. They saw that the immortals had brought horses with them to the ruins. Taking a few, the company left the temple ruins and continued their journey to Sparta on horseback. Whoa. Hold on. That's a lot to take in, says Themistocles. Along the journey, Amyntas finally told his friends what had happened back in the crypt. He told them who he was before he was taken, back in the original timeline. He told them about the gathering, his friends from different eras, the magical tyrant, a blue stone, the Chronai, Hamilton, etc. It was a lot to take in. So, let me get this straight. In the original timeline, the Spartans died at Thermopylae, and at the Battle of Plataea, we win the war against Persia? Asked Themistocles. That is correct. In the same timeline, I served under the nephew of the king during the final battle, replied Amyntas. But when you came back, you altered history and made us lose? So you are the reason we lost the war, exclaimed Themistocles. Amyntas could tell where the discussion was going. He turned his head and glared at the Athenian general. Before you finish your thought, let me tell you this. There was no guarantee that this was the chosen outcome. It was a risk I had to take. Furthermore, what would I have found if I returned after my summoning? I may have returned to Greece 10 years later, maybe 100. Or may arrive in a new world that was alien to me. You choose your next words carefully, Athenian, and don't you dare look down at me. You have no idea what I have gone through, said Amyntas. Themistocles stopped himself. He knew the Spartan was right. So, do you know what happened to your friends? Asked the prince, changing the subject. Amyntas had to think about that. Hard to say. Richard, Maury, and Sparrow returned to their times after we defeated Kairos. As for Symbol, Tira, and Decimus, I have no idea. I don't know. Perhaps they stayed behind, or maybe they went home as well, said Amyntas. What were they like? Asked Sheridan. Decimus was a family man. He said he had a wife and son back home in Rome. He was the oldest of us, and he was a good soldier. A great friend. Symbol, well, she was furious, blunt, and dangerous. I once saw her tear out a man's throat with her own teeth, but underneath her exterior was a kind, loving soul. She saved my life when we attacked Castle Olympus with our army. As for Tira, she's a fighter through and through. Strong, experienced, and a veteran much like Decimus. However, back home she had no family. And when she was chosen, I think we became her family. Amyntas paused for a moment. How I miss them. Amyntas then discussed Avalon, Vortgir, the Wendigos of Nairon, and how they became friends with Amyntas and the others. He also explained how Avalon became king and united the tribes of the realm. What about the staff and the moonstone? Did you and your friends reclaim them? Artaxerxes asked. No, after defeating Kairos, the castle collapsed. In the ensuing chaos, I dropped the staff. It's probably long gone, or... Amyntas stopped and suddenly remembered the great serpent, Jazar. Suddenly his body tensed up, and his breathing became erratic. He recalled that Jazar returned to reclaim the stone and wage war against the Chronai and his friends. Soon an array of questions flooded his mind. Did Jazar invade? Are the Chronai in danger? What of the others? Have I doomed them all? Amyntas began to have a panic attack and fell off his horse. Artaxerxes quickly dismounted and ran over to his friend. Amyntas! Amyntas, it's okay. It's okay, you're among friends. Please calm down. The prince tried his best to calm down his bodyguard. After a while, Amyntas slowed his breathing and steadied his heart rate. Eventually, he slowly got up to his feet. I'm alright. I'm okay. It's just a bad memory. He cautiously remounted his horse, and the group continued their journey to Sparta. After 5 days of hard riding and avoiding Macedonian scouts and zealot troops, the company finally reached Sparta's outskirts. Amyntas' home. Sparta, your loyal son has returned. Entering Sparta's outskirts, Amyntas was relieved that much of his home had remained the same. Lush green hills soon adored the plains. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this is now chapter 13. Much has not changed in 6 years, said Artaxerxes. For that, I am thankful, replied Amyntas. Nearing the city's entrance, the company was halted by a lone arrow tucked in the ground. That is close enough, said an unknown voice. Amyntas could not locate the direction of the voice. Get off your horse and lower your weapons, the voice said again. Amyntas and the others slowly dismounted and placed their weapons on the floor. Then a dozen archers appeared on the hilltops. Amyntas could not see the man's identity as the sun blocked his vision. Where'd you come from? Said an archer. From Thrace. Amyntas replied. Another arrow flew and missed his head by a few inches. Wrong choice of words. Do not fire until I give the word, yelled the commander. Suddenly, Artaxerxes whispered into Amyntas' ear. It's Mardonius. I recognize that voice anywhere. Tell him it's us, said the prince. He won't believe us unless we show him our faces. And he won't come down, quipped Amyntas. Then we go to him, retorted the prince. Choose your next words carefully, as they may be your last, barred the commander. Who are you? He repeated. Amyntas replied, If you permit us, we would like to show you who we are, said Amyntas. How do I know this is not a trick? Replied the commander. We are defenseless. We don't mean you any harm. Please allow us to meet you. The commander was silent momentarily, cautious about whether to take their word. One of the archers suggested that all the strangers come. The commander liked the plan. Very well, but you all must come to us. Non-negotiable. Amyntas turned to the others, realizing they had no choice. Sighing, they agreed to the terms. All right, we're coming up. Leaving their weapons beside their horses, Amyntas and their friends slowly made their way toward the archers at the top of the hill. They could finally see the archers' faces as they neared the slope summit. The archers were a mixture of Persian and Spartan soldiers and other Greeks from neighboring regions. As for the commander, it was Mardonius, but much older than Amyntas last remembered. The Persian commander looked the same, but had a patch covering one eye, and he was missing an arm. Mardonius then pointed at the company once more. Now, I say to you this one more time. Who are you? Amyntas slowly removed his hood. His eyes were fixed on his old Persian commander. It's been a while, Mardonius. Suddenly, one of the Spartans gasped and lowered his bow. By the gods, can it be you? Amyntas? Said the Spartan soldier. He smiled and nodded his head. It's me, Playstarchus. Then the others began to talk and lower their bows. Mardonius was still not convinced. If you are indeed him, where's the prince? Asked the Persian. Why not ask him yourself? Said Artaxerxes. Stepping beside his bodyguard, the prince removed his hood and revealed his face. Upon the realization, Mardonius was overcome with emotion and fell to his knees, tears rolling down his cheeks. My prince, praise the gods you're alive, he shouted. The other Persians also fell to their knees. Artaxerxes smiled. Though he could not see, he knew their emotions. Arise, my most loyal friend, said Artaxerxes. Mardonius arose and regained his composure. It's wonderful to know you're alive, my lord, said Mardonius. Come, we must meet the others. Deep within Sparta, Leonidas and his allies discussed countering Alexander's advance into the Temple of Ares. To their dismay, nothing seemed to be working. Nicholas was getting frustrated. We're going in circles. We can't meet him on open ground, and Persia withhold aids from us. It's only a matter of time until he takes Sparta, said Nicholas. I understand your concern, old friend, but our options are minimal, replied Leonidas. Before Nicholas could respond, Mardonius and his archers had returned. Mardonius, what brings you here? Asked Leonidas. Forgive my intrusion, Leonidas, but I have someone here that I think can help us. Moving out of the way, he presented Amyntas and the others to the council. Everyone was silent as Amyntas moved towards them. He studied their reaction and pondered what their thoughts might be. Just then a woman pushed past the others until she was face to face before him. Despite all the years, he could never forget his mother's face. She placed a hand on his cheek, feeling the tough hairs of his beard. Her eyes studied him as she spoke. What was the phrase I told you before you left for Plataea? She asked. Her voice was not harsh, but Amyntas could sense the authority in the question. Closing his eyes, he remembered her words to him. Do your worst, or I shall do mine, he proudly said. Katharina's eyes teared up with happiness and embraced her son in a tight hug. Spartan parents usually did not show their affection for their children or emotion, but this was the exception. Joining his wife, Nicholas embraced his son, for their family was whole once more. The room erupted into a conversation switching from talks of war to Amyntas and his friends. After the embrace, Amyntas presented his new allies. Fellow Spartans and Persians, it's good to see you all. I understand you have many questions, but let me introduce you to the rest of my party. He introduced the Iberian couple, Serdin and Dalandar, who kept Artaxerxes and the prince alive during their years of exile. Then he introduced their former enemy, the Athenian Themistocles. Everyone was shocked to see the man still alive. Amyntas further explained that they found him hiding in Syracuse, Sicily. With the introductions finished, Amyntas wanted to know everything that had happened these past 6 years. Alexander has been beating us, and we're losing too much ground. For years we have implored Persia for aid, but our pleas fall on deaf ears, said Mardonius. You can thank Artabanus for that, said Amyntas. Everyone in the room turned their attention to him. So you've heard? Asked Leonidas. Amyntas nodded. Curse that snake. Since he took the throne, Persia and the rest of the empire has crumbled. He spends most of his time in the palace, sending our agents looking for hidden treasures that fixing his empire. The mention of treasures perked his interest. Artaxerxes, the emblem, he said to his friend. The prince reached into his pocket and presented the others the emblem of the guild. The same one that was present all throughout Greece, and the one they had presented, or rather found in Carthage. What's this? Asked his father. This belonged to a man who served an ancient order in Persia. They called themselves the Guild of the Craven Eagle. They report solely to him, said Amyntas. What do they want? Asked Mardonius. This, said the prince. He showed them the star sapphire and the staff. Placing him on the table. Herodotus' eyes widened with shock. By Zeus's beard, is that the phoenix? Upon mentioning the name, all the older Greeks began to examine the staff in stone. Indeed, it was a staff from the myth. I thought it was only a mere legend, said Herodotus. It is authentic, as the guild wants it. We cannot let them have this wonder weapon, or the world will never be free, said Artaxerxes. I take it you have a plan? Asked Leonidas. Right now, Alexander's our main concern. How far has his army advanced? Asked Amyntas. We control territory just north of Attica. Beyond that is Macedonian-controlled territory. What of his army? 2,000 cavalry from Carthage, 7,000 Persian light infantry, and 10,000 heavy hoplites from Macedonia, replied his father. And ours? 3,000 Spartans, 2,000 Persian loyalists, and 1,000 cavalry, replied Mardonius. The odds were not in their favor indeed. They are vastly outnumbered, with very little chance of success. His thoughts then wandered back to his time with the gathering and the Javadar. He was so fixated on his thoughts that he did not hear Artaxerxes call for him. He was finally free from his thoughts when Themistocles tapped him on the shoulder. said the Spartan. They want to know your plan, said Themistocles. Amyntas looked around and saw that everyone was looking at him. He stumbled over his words. I don't know. I left the others and walked quickly outside the temple, leaving everyone inside confused. What's troubling him? Asked Leonidas. Artaxerxes knew the real reason, but he couldn't explain it to them. They would not understand. He blames himself for everything, said the prince. Explain, asked Herodotus. Amyntas knew about Artabanus' deceit. He wanted to kill him, but we were captured and sold into slavery. He has blamed himself unnecessarily these past 6 years, replied the prince. Though he did not fully explain it, his response was good enough for them. And with that, we will be stopping here. Yes, I know, maybe a little short, but I want to give us a little 2-chapter episode for Amyntas. So now it's getting interesting. He's now told his friends the truth. He's now back home, but he also is conflicted with the memories of the past back home. Will he be able to be the same Amyntas as he was in the gathering? Who knows? But thank you for joining me for what is now a late night episode, and I will see you all next week. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next episode.